coming in. Columbian is pleased to welcome candidate for Clark County Council, District 4. I'm Greg Jane, editorial page editor. You met Craig Brown, editor of the paper, and a member of the editorial board. I apologize, the other editorial board members are tied up. They won't be here today. Also, so you know, we have a couple of reporters sitting in here. They won't be asking questions in this forum, but might want to speak with you later or at some other time. And finally, we are videotaping this. We will post it unedited on our website for the benefit of our readers. And with that, we'll start with introductions. Just take about a minute to introduce yourself, give a brief background, explain why you're running for this position, and then we'll move on to specific policy questions.
Certainly. So I kind of did my introductions before the film was running, but thank you for doing this. This is a great public service that the paper provides. I'm a reader every day, wherever I am. Even if I'm traveling, I do pull up the Columbian online to read it. I am Gary Medvigy, and I'm in the position now. I've been there working pretty much nonstop and very feverishly since January, so about 10 months. The reason why I came out of retirement is I really thought I could contribute, and I miss serving in my former roles, whether as a judge, prosecutor, or in the military. I just miss serving, and it was a culture shock for me to retire. I thought I could contribute here with my training and expertise in many areas that are very transferable to challenges here in Clark County. I love this area, I love the people, and I just want to help. So there's a lot more work to do. I'm really just getting started. I've identified a lot of issues that will take long-term work, and I'm making progress already in a number of areas. So I want to continue the work that I'm starting with the council and working with the county manager. We're a good team right now, and I want people to recognize that you have good governance right now. I know there's been challenges in the past. We have overcome those, and we're correcting things and making good, pragmatic, well-informed, intelligent decisions across the board and working well together despite our disparate backgrounds and viewpoints. I mean, that's what the council's to do.
And I should mention, for the purpose of the video, we met last week with challenger Adrian Cortez. You were unable to make that meeting, so I appreciate you coming in today. But that's the reason that we only have one of you here today. So with that being said, let's start. One of the large issues facing the county is going to be the jail. The future of the jail, either rebuilding it or renovating it. What would be your preferred approach, and what's the price tag?
Well, number one, we have the report now. It's been presented to us, and we're digesting it as a council. And what we really want to do is narrow the focus of the way ahead. Most likely it's going to go to our Law and Justice Committee, which I chair. And I've done a lot of work with jails, obviously, over my career in the military, both emptying them as well as building them abroad, working with government agencies, Supreme Court, Attorney General, Minister of Justice. I've got a lot of background in custody. Having been a judge, I have a lot of background with sentencing. Having been a prosecutor, I have a lot of trial experience. So it'll be a good fit with the Law and Justice Committee, but we want to narrow what we look at. So great report, great detail after 18 months of hard work by a committee, but they didn't look at all at modifications, alterations. You know, some of the shortfalls are how you bring inmates into the jail. You know, Sally Port, reception area. You know, they didn't look at modifying what we have in place. They pretty much only looked at building a gold-plated, best practices kind of jail without looking at money, without looking at any of those issues. So we need to focus on what we want to do. My perspective right now, I've read the CFAC binder of all their findings and supporting documents. I want to do a remodel. I want to add the structures that we need, a focus that will impact everything from homeless to behavioral health challenges for those out in the community, not just in custody or in that justice process. We need some new structures. We need to add some additional bed space for behavioral support, addiction, detox, mental health. We need to grow some aspects of the jail infrastructure and then remodel. So I'm thinking that's where we're going to head, but the council is going to take it and give direction to the Law and Justice Committee, most likely, and then we'll start working on it. We're already looking at plussing up some of the staff or participant stakeholders on the Law and Justice Committee. But as it's constituted right now, we pretty much have all the main players.
Now, you mentioned you would need to add some infrastructure to the jail. Is there enough room for an expanded footprint on that site?
I don't believe so. Well, down by the river, the site there, where we already have some remodeling done and are going to put some additional behavioral health beds in custody, both secure and unsecure, that footprint, there's plenty of space to grow. Of course, there's trade-offs. If you have sentenced prisoners, there's no real transportation issue. You take them there, they're being housed, they're being taken care of, they're being given transition services, and then they're released. But if it's pre-trial or pending trial, then there's a lot of trips back and forth to the courthouse, which creates logistical challenge. And obviously, those that are responsible for that, meaning the sheriff, would like to have the jail capability right next to the courthouse. And I mean, that's across the nation. Those are typical concerns. But electronic arraignment is a solution. Busing is a solution, although not an ideal one. And once the remodel is done, I mean, we'll have to phase what we do. But most of the sentenced prisoners could be at the remote location, whereas those that are brought in into the system can be at the more local adjacent facility because of the need to go back and forth to court. I mean, there's so many layers to this, but I'm hoping to really invest in the infrastructure down by the river and to also help with the homeless situation as far as those that need drug addiction, detox. I mean, we need a bed space for every person that law enforcement contacts for services. And the other part I want to mention about CFAC, they really did a good job of having assumptions regarding where to estimate their bed space as growth of population, as crime rates ebb and flow, and you had an interesting article today in the paper. But the assumptions are that we're going to have a robust pretrial release program, alternative services, drug court, mental health court, courts that and services that are provided out of custody make perfect sense. They are best practices. The starting point for all this, for us and for all concerned citizens, is public safety. Obviously, everything we do, and we just took a briefing on the pretrial services that are in the works right now by the court and probation department. But the assumptions were fairly vague. They're amorphous. We really need to nail down what we're doing with pretrial release services to provide intensive supervision, moderate supervision, to no supervision, just on recognizance release. Because just from the meeting that we had yesterday in the presentation, there are some huge challenges that the court is facing. But preventing recidivism, making sure people come to court, protecting the public, and enforcing the judge's sentence. General deterrence, specific deterrence,
now, those
rehabilitation.
kinds of decisions, are they the full council? Where are those decisions made? Is it the Law and Order Committee? Or?
Okay, so right now, every counselor is pretty much independently digesting a CFAX report. Then we're going to get together in work sessions and hopefully agree what will be the next step, which we've already talked about and which was recommended by CFAC itself to go to Law and Justice. So it's individual right now. We'll have work sessions, then we'll discuss it and vote on it, hopefully narrow down the direction we want to take, which I'm hoping will be a remodel, some new infrastructure. You know, the biggest cost factor that they hadn't figured was the direct versus indirect supervision models. Every jail has a mix of that already. You know, if you've got suicide watch or other health issues, you're going to have direct supervision anyway. But going to a complete direct supervision model, which was investigated during the last 18 months, will double the sheriff's staff, double our personnel costs, and really is untenable. It would double the every night stay in the jail for our taxpayers. So,
is there any way to know yet this program, which sounds a lot less expensive than building a whole new direct supervision jail? And so, is it something that is going to be affordable within the county's current means, or would there have to be some kind of revenue increase somewhere?
So another subcomponent to it, obviously, we don't know how many beds we need. We don't know how successful pretrial release will be or jail alternatives will be. And as the county grows, what we need is a scalable, modular system. And so what I want to do is, we have to have humane, safe place of work for our corrections officers. We have to have humane and safe and rehabilitative type of facilities for the population we have now. So when we go through this process, I'd like to make it scalable. We need a hub and spoke design, if you will, for modules that you can add later, as you need more bed space. But let's not build more just to hope to fill it later, because construction is expensive, whether you buy the additional staff or not. We want to keep the capital costs reasonable. So I'm hoping it will be scalable. To get to your question, though, no matter what we do, unless it's just a very slow remodel, I think we're going to have to put it to the public for a bond, which I think is the right thing to do anyway, to let people vote on it. And so, but I hope to have a reasonable, practical, frugal plan. No bells and whistles. I mean, after all, it is a cornerstone of our justice system, but it has to be a place that people don't want to go. But also a place where we're providing services, transition services, and the services they need. Most of the population, roughly 25%, have mental health issues, drug addiction issues, and then the rest of them need some behavioral adjustment. But the jail and the sentence that the court gives, it's for general deterrence. So you out on the street see a sentence that someone else gets, they know something's going to happen, they don't want to go there. Specific deterrence, you're trying to disable the person that's committing crime, you want to prevent recidivism through rehabilitative processes. I mean, it's a complex set of services that the sheriff needs to provide, and other ancillary services.
Most likely, when would that bond be on the ballot?
Oh my gosh, hard to say. But we need to move on this. I mean, This is going to be a long process. But the jail, it's got challenges now, from HVAC, you name it. It's an aging facility, and we have not done a good job across the county on all of our capital facilities. The courthouse roof needs replacement. I mean, there's a lot of capital infrastructure that we've kind of deferred the maintenance on. So we need to start the process now. We need to start doing something now, which is taking place in part. But as far as predicting when a bond would be coming on, I think we need to go a lot farther down the road. And we're going to have public input. Once we come up with a good, feasible financial plan for this, I think we need to sense from the public whether they're going to support a bond or not before we even put it on the ballot.
And somewhat related, what is the condition of the county budget, and what do you foresee for that?
Okay, so number one, I want to give kudos to our present county manager. He has been working really hard. He's just coming up on his first year. He has been going department to department, which can be particularly challenging if those departments belong to a separate elected official, and looking for efficiencies, moving some business from one department to another. He's had identified a lot of one-time savings, but additionally continuous savings. Now, in our spring supplemental, which came very late because of some software issues that we had in rolling out our new programming. I mean, we just did the spring supplemental. Now we're working on the fall supplemental, and we're also started on the 2020 budget. So he's really putting a budget together. Historically, there have been, every 6 months, the department would say, "Hey, I need more money." There's no emerging, unidentified need that outside the budget. So we've had too many budget decision packages in the past that have routinely come from different departments that really weren't very realistic. It was like a wish list. He's stopping that. So the bottom line is he's taking a very pragmatic and great fiscal approach to our budget. Where we sit right now, from the very beginning, when I started in January, we were hearing words of structural deficit. The general fund bailing out other funds. And so he's reconciled that. The spring supplemental, we balanced the budget without asking for new taxes. And we're going to do it again. The budget is looking good for the spring supplemental. Now we're still having some issues crunching numbers for the 2020 budget. Our property tax revenue has been very stable, predictable, and is solid. Our sales tax revenue has been basically exceeding forecasts, about 7.5%, and that's well above cost of living increases, and that's been really keeping us afloat right now. But that could all change. So after this spring supplemental, where we're going to probably add another $4.7 million to our reserves, so we'll be in the positive to have a healthier position for the 2020 budget, especially should the economy slow down, which you can predict that it is going to slow down. It's just a matter of when. So a good pragmatic approach that is being led by a good conservative council, and that includes all of us. I wouldn't exclude anybody on that. So he's doing the taxpayers' bidding. He's doing what you would want him to do, to stay within budget without looking at raising taxes. But it's a continuing challenge. We have a lot of sales tax leakage, as you know. What has been passed so far has been controversial, and not that effective as far as helping retrieve the money that people are spending in Oregon instead of on this side of the river. People that are violating the law by not registering their cars here, that's problematic. We need citizens to stand up and follow the law. But we're healthy.
Part of that revenue too? The auto license revenue? I had no idea.
Yes,
okay.
So I will tell you that I've asked different departments, do we have a forecast for what we're missing out on? And there really are no solid numbers on what we're missing, but we're missing for sure. So we have budget challenges. They're ongoing, but the manager is leading the way, doing deep dives with each department. We're now looking at overtime countywide because that's a huge draw on our budget, and that either tells us we don't have enough full-time staffing or the overtime is not being properly managed. So we're going to take a hard look at that next.
And now your opponent has said he would not support the permissible 1% levy increase. Would you make the same pledge, or?
Yeah, absolutely not. You know what? I'm a good Republican. I'm a good conservative, and I know George Bush gravely. He wish he hadn't uttered those words. Read my lips, no new taxes. It's irresponsible. We have a fiduciary duty to the county. So what does that mean?
It's irresponsible to flat out say
right, without knowing. And at the time he first uttered that, and I saw the video, we were facing a budget deficit. So what's the immediate response? Okay, we're going to have furloughs. We're going to start letting people off. Sure. We want to avoid that. We want to protect our workforce. We want to make good, proactive, pragmatic, and physically responsible decisions. So to say you're not going to ever raise taxes, and I have to add, he just voted for his own salary raise, almost doubled it for some of them, and he came out publicly and said, check my record, I haven't voted for tax increases. You check his record, I don't know if you have, but he has. I mean, he's voted several times to raise utility taxes and property taxes. Just last year he voted to raise property tax 1% in battlegrounds. So I think it's a pandering statement. I think he's just trying to get votes by making that. I don't think it's a responsible statement. Nevertheless, you can check my vote so far and what I've been telling in every session, whatever the subject, and 179th was the clearest vote. And from January's first briefing until we finally funded that holding area, I was pushing no new taxes, and I think to some extent I'll take credit for that, because that first work session that we had in that workroom, there was one vote undecided. There was my vote saying no new taxes, and then the other councilors were looking at banked capacity. I mean, more than 1%. So I think eventually I was able, through my constant narration of no new taxes, I think everyone kind of came around to that. And the county staff started putting on the table options that didn't include taxes. And that's certainly my goal, unquestionably. No new taxes, but I wouldn't make any promises. I don't think that's responsible.
Sure. And let's talk about the 179th
Please.
Street. How do you think did the county approach that in an effective manner? Where's it going to go from here?
Well, so we really are just at a starting point, and I kind of said that night when we voted it in, and I think everyone agrees with that. This has been in place for a decade. It's part of our growth management plan. It's within the urban growth boundary. It was pragmatically done. Staff had done their work. Staff went overboard to come up with different funding options. And I want to say all of the funding is done with a very conservative outlook. So they're really conservatively maybe overestimating the cost of capital infrastructure initially for the intersections that need to be improved. And they're underrepresenting what we can get by grants, underrepresenting what revenue will be coming in. So we'll be in a good place.
That's
even
the
if
preferable scenario.
Right. Even if the economy slows down, all that will happen is the development will slow down. So I want to add too, the developers, many of which are homegrown, family-oriented from Clark County, really stepped up. And as the public started saying they need to pay more, we added to those impact fees that they were going to have to pay, as well as the surcharges. And they agreed to it, including the school impact fees. Those were dramatically increased as well at the request of the different school districts. So the developers really pitched in equally. Every one of these developments, by law, must be a balanced funding model. The percentages aren't set in stone, but I think we had very cooperative developers. The staff did their homework. We have a good plan in place. I'm not an economist. A lot of this is new to me, but I've read the projections, and there were two done by very reputable and notable people, and the forecasts are phenomenal. So I'm hoping, even if we approach half of it, not only with the housing that will be presented, but the tax impact from the new construction, the tax impact long-term from the new tax base that will be created, the ability, one of the projections was 7,700 new jobs over the course of this build-out. So the short answer is I think the staff did a great amount of work. We kept querying them. A lot of what you see on TV is only a fraction of what we do. We met many times, 1 on 2, 2 on 1, with different staff members from community development, public works on some of the issues that they're in the wastewater. We did a lot of work out of the public view as well as questions were generated through public comment and through counselor discussion. So a lot of work went into it, and we are at the starting point. And we really need to focus, as Councilor Les really highlighted, and we all discussed behind the scenes, we need to figure out a way to incentivize, to bring family wage job businesses as a mix. You know, we can't just put in houses and call it a day. We need to do more on bringing in jobs. So that's a goal of everyone, and that'll be a next step. And we just discussed that yesterday. We're going to look for all the possibilities to incentivize and work with the developers to help bring them, help them attract businesses that have good family wage jobs. I'm not talking minimum wage jobs. I'm talking those jobs that families can rely on.
Do you think the land along the Appalachian Prairie Railroad line, is that going to be an important spot for those jobs? So I know that you had said something about you didn't see too much of a future for rural lands to become industrial property on your website.
Well, and we lost on that issue with the Court of Appeals.
Right.
You know, there was legislation that allowed the county or commission years ago to set aside some lands for as an industrial land bank. Sounded like a good idea at the time. So I don't even think I had moved when they were discussing that. I've just been here 3 years now, going on 3 years. So we lost at that issue. You know, it's farmland, and it had just recently been designated as rural land, and so there wasn't a whole lot of support, data or otherwise, to make what is existing farmland into industrial land. And the Court of Appeals, although they didn't address it, you know, the Growth Management Board had found that in violation of the act, and the Court of Appeals said, we don't have jurisdiction of this because our county lawyers missed the filing date on it, but in a footnote did say, you know, if we had the issue, you would have lost anyway. So, you know, the individual property owners may not be happy with that, but quite frankly, it's rural land. Now, getting to Brush Prairie, so that's different from the holding area, obviously, and we haven't dealt with that issue at all since I've been on the county. I mean, all of that work initially was last year, you know, all the public hearings, public input, and then we went into mediation with the railroad operator, and then immediately into litigation. So none of that work that's previously been done has been worked on, revisited. The main aspects of it, it's a bad fit. And it's within or outside the urban growth boundary, most of it. So it's a bad fit. And whether through mistake or intentionally done by other legislators, you know, they add the no sewer system hookup caveat to it, which is somewhat of a poison pill because there aren't a whole lot of big businesses that may be into industry that are going to also create their own sewage treatment plant. And I've tried to meet with some of the legislators that were responsible locally for that bill just to say what was intended here, because some people thought it was a mistake. So it's a bad fit. The other thing the main focus areas once we get back into it, which by the way could be years because we don't know how long this litigation's going to go on, and we can't do anything with the area until we first work out the railroad operator agreement. You know, so this notion of a 1 mile overlay from the railroad, to me, one that didn't pass, you know, that's not approved. 500 feet is approved. 500 feet to me is adjacent. A mile is not. So I don't know, I'm not sure where that came from other than I heard it came really from the railroad operator and those that supported him. So that's too large a swath, and I don't think that'll ever be approved. The 500 foot is a poor fit in some locations, primarily in the rural area and Brush Prairie. You know, there are some industrial areas close in to the city of Vancouver, and north, that may be kind of a spot fitting, so we're going to have to take a laser view. The other thing that I didn't understand is why they didn't take the overlay all the way to the north, all the way to the end of the rail line. And the reason I was told is, well, we thought it would be easier just to phase it. I think that's a mistake, because we really need the jobs at the end of the rail line to sustain the rail line, whether it's timber, agriculture, rock,
Which is why that rail line was built in the first place, is because it was a big
exactly.
deal at the end of it.
And I do want to emphasize, so it's a law that we need to try to use if we can to sustain the railroad, if we can. It is part of the rural nature of that whole area, not just the historic part that people are using for tourism, but wine country tours, tourism, transport. I mean, these are all possibilities that we don't want to lose. I mean, the right-of-way alone is very valuable in case it does get developed where we want a light rail to go there instead. I'm not proposing that.
Yeah.
But the right-of-way alone is important. So everything we do in the county needs to be sustainable, including the railroad. And if we can get businesses out at the end, and that's what my approach would be, is to, hey, we need to address this overlay, and also what businesses would be appropriate to have along the rail line, and then whatever mitigation, and the staff did a lot of work. If you looked at the code they were trying to put in place, a lot of mitigation, from berms to setbacks to spurs. They were trying to make this industry fit as well as it could, but there are some locations that it would just simply be a poor fit. And as of right now, we don't have enough use to really sustain it. And we have seen no revenue from the operator. It was a very one-sided operational contract, which is why we're in litigation, in part because we really don't have a contract. We're one of the few counties in the country that owns its own railroad. I don't know if that's a good thing. Maybe BNSF would want to buy it from us. I don't know. But we are continuing to get grant money. We just got another $1.25 million to make repairs to the line, mostly as far as Battleground. Not any of that money is going north. It's to a certain mile marker. So I've been inquiring as to that. Well, who's making those decisions? We're responsible for repair, trestles, bridges. We've got all the overhead and none of the revenue right now. So it's I wouldn't say it's overly complicated, but right now we just aren't addressing the issue. I'm looking forward to getting into it, but there's a lot more work to be done. And I want to assure the neighborhoods that live there that, their voice was heard loud and clear. And I've talked to each councilor about that, and they're all very impressed with the outcry about, and it's not just not in my backyard. I mean, they have good reason to rely on the urban growth boundary and the lifestyle they have, and the lifestyle that was predicted for them by our comprehensive plan. So they've got good cause, and believe me, everyone heard that, including me. I went back and looked at a lot of the testimony and comments that were made.
Interesting is, since you did mention light rail, what would be your preference for the I-5 bridge?
So we all are losers from the last CRC. I mean, there was no good outcome from that. As I dig into this issue, and I've been on the RTC, and I don't know if you've been paying attention to any of those hearings, we're having a lot of discussion, more than, there have been people that have been going to the RTC for many, many, many years, and they're thanking me for leading these issues to get people to discuss it. We need a plan that looks into the future, that includes additional corridors, and I'm not taking a stand on whether it's a western or eastern or tunnel. We are going to put more ferry service in place. That's already in the works, but that's not really an additional corridor of much consequence because of the river. If it was the Seattle port, harbor, different story with lots of...
Our geography is different.
Yeah. But ferries are coming in earnest. I mean, they've been here over the course of our history. But what we're missing is someone to say, I-5, let's build that bridge in the next 5 years. Let's build that bridge in the next 10 years. And I've been working with some of our local legislators saying, lead the way, the bi-state panel that's been put together, set some goals.
Would you make I-5 the priority over
So,
a third crossing?
Okay, so we need an overarching strategic plan. We don't have it. There's been a lot of visioning work done, mainly this north of the river, that said, yeah, we need another bridge. Okay, so I like the I-5 bridge. It's it's industrial art. I mean, it's the industrial era, and it's a beautiful bridge. I wish it could remain in place, but it is a bad fit on a navigable river that has commerce. On the other hand, commerce has adjusted. The deep channel turns, as it hits I-5, and which has benefited the Port of Vancouver and Ridgefield. So I'm not trying to derail the I-5 bridge. We need to, in any capital infrastructure, you need to keep maintaining it. You have to have a replacement plan, and it is a bad fit on a major thoroughfare from Canada to Mexico. It doesn't make sense to have something that you need to lift. So I want to see it replaced. I wish there was some way to keep that industrial vestige, a historic site. It needs to be replaced, so I'm not trying to derail it. But what would have been better, far better, is if we had that additional corridor that has been identified more than 20 years ago, actively talked about in 2007, 8, 9. Updates since then. We had an architect actually show us a plan that ties to 192nd and 84 at a reasonable price, and it was a beautiful span. No one's ever done anything with it. There's been no political will to move forward. But if there's a calamity and the bridge comes down, we're going to be in a world of hurt. So it would have been better to have that other corridor in place. I grew up just outside of New York City. I've seen a lot of development. In California, it's always, every bridge and roadway seems to be under construction all the time. When you have a bridge being built next to another bridge, just the sight, the people that look, just take a glance to look at it, slows down traffic, creates a traffic jam. Once they try to tie that bridge, the new bridge, into the infrastructure, if it goes perfectly smoothly, and I'm sure ODOT and Washington Department of Transportation will work that out perfectly, it's going to be a nightmare. I mean, you've seen some of it or read some of it in Seattle with the new tunnel up there. I mean, so it would have been better to alleviate the strain on the I-5 corridor by having another one already built. So if someone was to ask me in a perfect world, yeah, we should shift our focus. Yes, we need to replace the I-5 bridge, but we need another corridor now. I really think we're past that. The other limiting factor is the I-5 corridor is a limited corridor. No matter what improvements you make, whatever management devices you put in place, whatever widening you do, you're just talking a minute off the commute or a couple minutes off the commute. You're not pulling freight off of that, and you need to pull fewer freight off. You need a corridor that bypasses the Portland downtown. So we're only going to incrementally improve the throughput on that corridor. The real benefit is we have an aging infrastructure there that is at risk, whether you believe in an earthquake or river or whatever, or another volcano going that somehow topples the bridge. I mean, it's old. I mean, at some point it's going to need to be replaced. So I would favor another corridor now, but I'm not in any way. I'm trying to get the discussion going to get that vision of another corridor into a plan so that we can start doing the right of way. North and south of the river, we can't do it by ourselves, and we are starting the conversation with Clark County Council and our staff, but we have to do it through the RTC and our partners in Oregon to get rights of way in place, to get designing in place, to identify what the costs will be, and then if once you've identified and have a plan in place with some kind of target date, then we can start putting financing against it and perhaps another bond to see if the public would support it. So as part of that strategic plan, light rail is a good fit eventually at some point. Maybe when the county has a population of 1 million people. Right now, buses are the answer. Light rail is way too expensive, way too limited, not only on where it can start and stop, but its throughput. So we're not in need of light rail now, and I'm hoping the governor he seems to have toned it down, and I'm hoping he backs off his mandatory light rail. And as I see, Oregon has put forward a position letter, and they are including ore buses for the mass transit piece. At some point, the strategic plan should be ready for light rail or some other mass transit kind of system. I mean, it's going to be the future once we get to a demand level where people will actually use it. And we don't want to create a welfare system for every mass transit system in
Let me ask
advance.
one more question about the corridor. So,
Please.
So are you envisioning a more limited arterial kind of corridor that would connect, say, Highway 14 to Interstate 84, or is this like a larger freeway corridor that would pull trucks off the freeway north of Vancouver and route them back to I-5
Yeah.
south of Portland?
So I'm hoping, I'm not an engineer, and we have good terrain in the east, according to some people. We've got wetlands in the west. The goal would be to have a real bypass. Each of our ports wants to look at freight rail mobility. Not necessarily rail, but we have rail already in place. But freight mobility is a problem. And so we really need a bypass. The only way a bypass really works is to geographically have it away from 205 and 5. I mean, you need physical space. Otherwise, you're still going to get the east-west gridlock getting to those corridors. So I think the simple answer is yes, I would envision a southern connector and a northern connector that could provide an alternative to those who aren't coming here or leaving here to get around both metropolitan areas.
So a truck driver from Tacoma that's headed to Eugene or something
Right.
like that would be able to use
I mean,
that.
on a national map of commerce, you will see that this is a terrible area for congestion, and that costs money for those that are long haul freight. It costs us in health concerns, whether it's a carbon footprint, smog. I mean, it has a lot of impacts that we really haven't quantified very well. I think we've kind of ignored the question, although citizens keep asking the question. And I'm hoping to get the RTC to do some more modeling and also look at those costs. What is the cost to commerce right now by having this congestion? It's quantifiable, and those figures are out there. We just need to make them a little bit more public. So yes, I would like, and that's going to get some people up in arms.
Oh, for
Because
sure.
you're going to put a highway or a right-of-way through farmland, dairy land, or in other places that people don't want to see it. But that's part of the comprehensive land use plan. There's a lot of land use planning that needs to go. So if we don't start, we should have been doing this since once they identified the vision of, hey, we need another corridor now, someone should have, north and south of the river, started to take that on and start really making it into a plan. So I'm trying to push for that, and so I'm getting some headway both on the council and the RTC, but we've got a long way to go.
Oh, Gary, actually, several more topics we could get to, but we should start wrapping it up.
I'm sorry.
What specifically, is there anything else near the top of your list that we should ask about?
Well, you've hit on most of them. I mean, we are starting the beginning stages of the next comp plan update. I'm hoping as part of that process to really get into some reform, especially for the unincorporated area. We've got mismatched zoning in place. We've got some zoning that wasn't really rationalized when first put in place. And there are a lot of homeowners out there that have, in one context, lost their rights to use their property in ways that they should not have. So I'm looking for long-term reform as we look at the next comp plan update, and also bringing some relief individually to some of these landowners. We are working very assiduously. Obviously, they don't work directly for the council, but we can add pressure to the conversation of doing better with the permitting process. We are making progress, but that issue pops up all the time. We did have a consultant, we did have a committee, and they are now putting in place those ideas. So we hope to improve that for our citizens and smooth out the system. We really need to do a lot better with the homeless situation. I want to state unequivocally, we need goals. The first one is, let's stop the rise in homelessness. And that's the low-hanging fruit. The next one is, let's really help the people that are the most intransient, those with mental health and addiction issues. I'm working very hard on that, not only in the Law and Justice Committee, Council for the Homeless, but on the council. We're looking to reform the Council for the Homeless right now, as far as between the city and the council for the county, how we really manage all of the disparate grants that are available, because we need affordable housing, which will impact homelessness. So we have a lot of work to do there, but we really need to get on top of the homeless situation. And so I'm really trying to work hard on that right now.
Great, then give us your final pitch for why voters should support you, and feel free to mention any endorsements you'd like to share.
Well, so I will tell you that I have not actively sought endorsements, but have them, and I just invite you to go to the PDC
Sure.
webpage and look to see. They come from a wide group of individuals, labor, construction, a wide group of people, including other elected officials. I bring an educated approach to making decisions. I mean, the Army really taught that, from mid-level training, Command and General Staff College, to senior level training, the Army War College, the Masters I have in National Security, Capstone, which was a joint flag officer school. All of those focus on educating me on how to make good decisions, bring in input from all sources, and make the best possible decisions. Future planning is a part of my background, and we need more deliberate, pragmatic, and intelligent choices for future planning. And I think I'd bring those skill sets to the table. My whole reputation, and the reason why I was promoted through different positions at ever-increasing levels of responsibility in the military, was because I get things done, and I do them in a good way, working with others and pulling it together. I had several commands. I had deployments overseas. I had combat tours. All of that weighs in to my ability to make good, fair-minded, compassionate, and educated decisions. So I have the skill sets, and I want to serve. That's why I'm here. That's why I stepped into this position. I don't need the job. I was retired. I was starting to enjoy my retirement. This has been an intellectual challenge. It takes a lot of time. I mean, I'm spending 30, 40 hours a week, some weeks, but at least 20 to 30 hours every week on these issues. So it is time consuming and challenging, and I enjoy it, and I enjoy helping my neighbors. So I would be honored by everyone's support and vote, and I am getting that from my constituents. Thank you for stepping up. You were representing us well, and I haven't had any complaints about decisions I've made, at least that have come to my attention.
Great, well, thank you. Thanks so much.